Hello folks, today I'm taking a look at the Google Stadia game platform. Now this was sent to YouTubers who were subscribed to YouTube's premium service as of like November of last year. So I got it for $0. It lists for $100. Let's see if it's worth that $100 price tag or even the $0 that I paid for it. Stadia is a game streaming platform, and you don't actually need any of this stuff to play games on Stadia. You can play Stadia games on your PC with the Chrome browser, on most tablets, on many phones, on some of the beefier Chromecasts. And the way it works is that the game itself is running on Google's substantial hardware. They're relaying the video down to whatever device you're playing on, and the inputs are sent back to Stadia servers for processing. So you don't need a high-end PC or a shiny new console to play the latest, greatest games at very good settings. Now, the premium package does take this one step further. They do give you a Google Chromecast Ultra, which is kind of the latest and greatest, and they do provide a wireless controller. And this controller is really the unique thing in this package. Now, most controllers are wired or wireless to a console or a PC, so as you click the buttons and move the sticks, it relays that to the PC and that processes it through the game. But these games are running on Google's servers, so there's really no use in the controller telling the Chromecast or telling your PC what's happening. It's the Stadia servers that need to know the inputs. So this controller is actually its own independent wireless device on your network, and it communicates directly with Stadia servers, skipping that middleman hop. Now that's likely only going to save a few tens of milliseconds, but when you're talking about kind of the compounding latency that's involved with game streaming, that can really add up. And it's kind of an ingenious solution to the problem. Now, if you decide that you really don't like Stadia, but you already shelled out the $100 for the premium package, well, you're not left empty-handed. The Chromecast Ultra is a great Chromecast on its own, and this controller, while you can't take advantage of the wireless capabilities, it is a pretty good wired controller as well. It is USB-C. It seems to be solid and well built. It's maybe actually a little heavy because it has to have all that wireless radio and junk in it, but overall, it's a nice controller. Now, setting up the Stadia Pro package is very simple. It's all app-based. So the Google Home app on your phone will automatically find your Chromecast, it'll connect it to your Wi-Fi, it'll get it all set up for you, and hold your hand through the entire thing. The controller's not much different. You launch the Stadia app, it'll say, hey look, I got a controller, do you want to pair it to the Chromecast? There's a handful of button presses and you're there. It's a really easy, slick setup that's, again, based on applications that you have on your phone. So since we're going to be streaming a lot of video down and a lot of inputs back up to Google Stadia servers, the quality of your internet is really going to dictate how good your Stadia experience is. If you have fiber pulled to your house and you're basically sitting on an internet backbone, you're likely going to have a nearly flawless experience playing Stadia games. However, if you're on DSL with a 12-year-old 802.11b router, things might be nigh on unplayable. Now, you don't need a super fast connection. Google recommends, I believe it's 10 megabits for 1080p game streaming. However, you do need a reliable low latency connection, and that's something that like speedtest.net can't really tell you. And even Google's own speed test service really only gives you a megabit number and not a number of dropped packets or number of missed presses type of metric. Now, my internet here at home is Comcast, and I passed Google speed test with flying colors. I've never had an issue with latency or playing other games online. I suspect that my internet connection is going to be more than enough for at least 1080p streaming, if not even higher. Wi-Fi here is a little bit of a different story. I have blanketed the first floor of my house with Wi-Fi, and it's a strong connection in every room downstairs. However, I didn't put any access points in my upstairs office, so the Wi-Fi up here is a little spotty because everything is wired. So I should be able to judge the experience wired with strong Wi-Fi and with weak Wi-Fi playing through the Chromecast. Now, I tested a handful of games in those three different scenarios. A really good connection and a certain specific set of games, the Stadia experience is very, very close to a high-powered PC or a console-based experience, and that was actually a bit surprising how good it was in many instances. On the other hand, there were games that just did not feel right. Destiny just was off regardless of the Wi-Fi quality or the wired quality or controller or mouse and keyboard. Every time I played it, it just felt slower. Sniper Elite also seemed to have just some lag every time I played it. It was only a few tens of milliseconds, and a casual gamer, more casual than myself, probably wouldn't even notice. But you're definitely not going to be playing anything competitive on Stadia, at least not with a decent experience. So that kind of brings me to who exactly is the audience for Stadia. And when this service came out a year or so ago, I would have really struggled to find somebody who would benefit from this kind of a device. The closest I can come from is a very, very casual gamer who does not want to own a gaming PC, who does not want to own a console, but still wants to try out maybe like a Madden every year, or wants to play a Call of Duty every year, or something along those lines. Something you don't want to spend $400 or $500 up front for a console just so you can play one game. Well, you can buy the one game on Stadia. If you're satisfied with 1080p streaming, you don't even have to pay for the service. You just buy the game, play the game as much as you want, and when you're done, you're done. Now, this year, things are a little different. If you haven't noticed, you pretty much cannot buy GPUs and mostly CPUs at this time. And if you can, you're waiting in long queues or paying scalper prices to get them. And the biggest game of last year, regardless of what you thought of its quality, was Cyberpunk. The only viable way to play Cyberpunk was on a high-powered PC. Second to that was probably Stadia. None of the console experiences were worth a crap, and you could not get the hardware to play Cyberpunk decently if you didn't already own it. And you could also kind of say that for Valhalla or Watch Dogs Legion or any of the other AAA games that released late last year. The PC and console landscape is just so tattered right now that game streaming is kind of not that terrible of an idea for the right person. Now, the other use case I would see for Stadia are people who travel a lot and don't want to buy a high-powered gaming PC or, install a bunch of their Steam library on said PC, that kind of thing. And that one's a little rough. If I was traveling and I had a mediocre PC, I think my preference would be to go with something like Parsec, so I could stream from my home instead of streaming from Google servers. If I really didn't want to use my home PC and my home internet, GeForce Now from NVIDIA is a pretty great service. And the great thing about GeForce Now is that it gives you access to most of your Steam library without having to repurchase those games. Whereas everything you want to play on Stadia, you have to buy new regardless of where else you might own it. And I think that's the biggest disappointment with Stadia. When this service was announced a couple of years ago, people thought it was going to be more like a Netflix for gaming. You pay a monthly fee, you get access to a big collection of publisher backlogs, and it's just, play what you want type of service, just like Netflix is for movies and TV shows. What we ended up getting was a purchase every game. If you subscribe to Pro, you do get a handful of games that seem to be perpetually on the service, and some that are of limited time, available to Pro members. But they're kind of a small catalog. It's not many AAA titles, and it's not really worth the subscription just for those games. And if you compare it to something like Xbox Game Pass, where for $10 a month, the same price as a Stadia Pro membership or whatever they call it, you get Microsoft's entire back catalog. You get all of their new releases on release day. You get a bunch of other publishers sprinkled in as well. That is a far better value than what you get for Stadia. And if you add on $5 more, which now we're at $15 a month, they're getting kind of expensive, I know, but you can also stream for their service just like Stadia. So at the end of the day, I don't know that I can recommend Stadia for most people. Definitely not for mediocre to hardcore gamers. If you're that casual gamer who just wants to play one or two big AAA titles a year and they're available on Stadia, and you don't want to shell out hundreds of dollars for a console or keep a gaming PC up to date, then maybe there's a path forward for you there. But I can't really see casual gamers buying just a handful of games every once in a while, supporting a service the scale of Stadia. And my gut feeling is that if that's really the audience that they're attracting, that this service isn't going to live forever. And we're already seeing some cracks in that armor. Google has already shut down their dedicated gaming studio, presumably the studio that was making Stadia exclusives. Now that doesn't mean that they're closing down the service imminently, but it's definitely not a step in the right direction. So if you are that casual gamer and you're only going to play one or two games a year and you're interested in the Stadia platform, does it make sense to buy this Pro package? If you don't have a console or a computer hooked up to your TV, then yeah, this makes pretty good sense. The Chromecast Ultra is a pretty good little device, even if you decide to drop the Stadia. The controller works pretty darn well, had no issues with lag or latency with the controller. So, you know, to hang this one little thing behind your TV, it takes up practically no space. It's, you know, easy to set up and use. It's a pretty good alternative to a console if the Stadia platform is how you want to play your games. So overall, if you're not that super casual gamer and you don't mind owning a console or playing games on a PC and possibly even streaming via GeForce Now, it's hard to recommend Stadia as a platform. Having to rebuy all your games and the fact that they only live in Stadia, it's a very hard sell. And if Stadia does go away, what happens to those games? Do they give you Steam credits? Do they give you partial refunds? Do they give you nothing? You don't actually own those games, so theoretically that could go away and leave you completely empty-handed. So I don't think I could recommend Stadia itself to anybody but the most casual gamer. So what do you think? Is there a use case that I'm missing here? Have you invested in the Stadia platform? I would love to hear what you have to say. And if you like this video, give it a like. If you liked my other videos, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.